Three, two, one, go. Hello. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to our Mindful Leadership podcast. And as always, we have my dear friend, Natasha Rocha, and today, special guest, Dr. Yosi Amram. Thank you very much for joining us, Yosi. It's great to see you.
Thank you, John. I'm delighted to be here with you and Natasha. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I think John might have been a little bit stuck there. Yosi, would you mind giving us a quick introduction into your journey and describing how you got to where you got right now?
Okay, sure. So I'll try and keep it brief. It's my entire story, just a little over a year and a half long. No, I'm kidding. I'm a lot older than that. So my journey actually began, I was born and raised in Israel, and like all young men, I was drafted into the military despite my pacifistic leaning. There's a lot going on in that region of the world, which is heartbreaking. Luckily, I served at a time that was peaceful, and I kind of came into the military as a shy, introverted kid. But to my surprise, I had the fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment and won all these leadership awards. So even though I excelled at that context, the military chafed at my soul, and I resolved to someday try and build an organization and lead people based on more humanistic values. That while the command and control model of the military was effective and necessary in battle, it really wasn't inspiring or bringing out the best in people in the current world, where we have knowledge workers and people that need to be creative and inspired and thoughtful and so on. So that kind of led me to come to the US and get my education in engineering at MIT and in business at Harvard, and then ultimately led me to be the founder and CEO of two technology companies that I had the good fortune of leading through their public offerings. But I was so driven and committed to my work that I kind of burned out. I was working 70, 80 hours a week, and there were some threats to our business model as the internet was coming on. And I hit what's called the dark night of the soul. I got depressed, and I was kind of frozen with fear and so on. But I managed through persistence and so on to turn the business around, turn it into an internet business. And in the midst of it, and then as we were going public, I had this spiritual awakening experience where I kind of shattered the illusion of our separateness, and I saw the interconnectedness of our reality and how all reality is pervaded by consciousness. And that kind of blew the circuits of my mind and actually threw me into a manic episode, which was very disturbing. I was the CEO of a public company at the time, and it kind of ultimately led to me getting pushed out of the company. I was put on a quote unquote a voluntary leave of absence, which wasn't voluntary in any ways. But my board felt like that, I was too unstable and I was trying to do too many things too fast. I was having all these visions about where the internet was going, and I was trying to get there too quickly without really being open to understanding the practicalities of my team and our ability to execute. I wanted everything done yesterday. So anyway, that was very traumatic, but that experience kind of got me to reflect, what was this all about? And it changed the direction of my life, that got me to go back to school and become a clinical psychologist to understand my own psychology, what got me to be so driven, how real was this? Was it just a delusion, this experiences of oneness? And that's what led me into this field of spiritual intelligence. I had heard of the concept, but it wasn't really defined. I knew a lot about emotional intelligence and the research that was done in how it supports leadership and all kinds of positive outcomes. I thought, oh, it'd be interesting to see what is this spiritual intelligence. And that got me into the research to define it, and then develop the first academic measure of it. And then through my research, demonstrate that it contributes to leadership effectiveness. The leaders that had scored higher on spiritual intelligence led teams with greater morale, greater commitment, lower turnover. And that was after controlling for emotional intelligence. So the two were complementary and reinforcing each other. So that's kind of how I got into this whole area of spiritual intelligence. These days, I'm a clinical psychologist and a leadership coach. I work with CEOs of technology companies in Silicon Valley. I've coached over 100 CEOs, and a number of them have built businesses that have reached revenues in the billions and thousands of employees. So I've had the good fortune of accompanying them and facilitating their growth as they developed and matured and became more inspired themselves and developing these qualities and then inspiring their organization into greater and better performance. So that's my quick bio and spiel.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Would you be able to define spiritual intelligence for us, please,
Sure.
in your words?
Sure. So first, let me just draw an analogy. Spiritual intelligence analogous to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence usually is defined as the ability to draw on and be aware of emotional resources to help regulate our own and others' emotions. Spiritual intelligence is the capacity to draw on and embody spiritual resources and qualities that have been hailed by all the world's spiritual traditions in a way that enhances functioning and well-being. So you might say, what are these spiritual qualities and values? So these would be things like purpose, service, integrity, trust, gratitude, compassion, egolessness, humility, and so on. So these qualities, through my research, were having interviewed 71 teachers across all the world's traditions, were common across whether someone was Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist. They all speak about passionate purpose, compassionate service, and so on, regardless of their theology and cosmology. So, but it's the ability to embody these qualities in daily life. It's not an experience, nor is it a belief. So, a spiritual belief was like you believe in a deity like God or in the afterlife or whatever it is. A spiritual experience would be a momentary experience. It may be meditating and your ego is dissolved. You experience oneness, or I'm walking in the forest and I feel one with the forest. So those would be experiences. But spiritual intelligence, how do I embody these qualities and values in my daily life as I'm driving on the freeway, as I'm shopping in the supermarket, as I'm working with my team at work, as I'm relating with friends and family and my relationships? So it's about embodiment and living those qualities in a daily life.
Fabulous. And thank you for introducing yourself as I've now switched internet connection. And thank you, Yosi, for sharing your experience. And I went through an awakening, or my big awakening in 2017. I was a senior manager at Amazon at the time, and I found it really hard. It created almost like these two versions of me. One was like the one that was, doing the kind of Western culture of just, more money, more projects, more customers, more impact, more bigger house, these things. But this other side of me had witnessed in a meditation for the first time planets and the stars being born and the energy flowing between them and this beautiful feeling of unity. Got me meditating every day. And like my life has changed quite gradually since then. Well, I left the company in May and started my own business doing energy healing and meditation for people. And I think it was, I feel like that journey that I've experienced, and thank you for sharing yours, is, something that many of us will also be experiencing in the future. And I love, I feel like you're the first person I've come along who's got some answers, right? That actually you don't need to give up, either. Like you can bring together, and I love the sense of purpose and and certitude, and being able to really connect with the why. Like, why are you going to work each day? What is the thing that you want to do for this world? And I think that was some of the larger disconnect that I had initially. One thing I started to gravitate towards was I knew I was working with artificial intelligence in recruitment for so AI and people, and I knew that we could do a better job for people, and that started really getting me thinking. You know, there's more purpose behind the work. I found it really hard though to bring the word. I think it's a trigger word for me still. It's like spirituality into business, and I'm intrigued at how have you been able to like bring these concepts to people in business when they're quite alien to them?
Yeah, so I mean, you have to be careful. I mean, that's why I'm differentiating between spirituality and spiritual intelligence, and it's independent of any kind of religious belief or any particular even spiritual belief, etc. And even atheists can that have no interest in spirituality. A number of my clients are atheists, so my clients are across the spectrum from devout religion practitioner in one tradition to spiritual but not religious to agnostics to atheists. But one can develop a passionate sense of purpose around what they're doing, and that enthusiasm and passion then reverberates and draws people that are interested in that vision, that idea to you as a leader. So as you get inspired by your vision, by your purpose, then others come to you. Or you know, you develop a sense of integrity or humility. And the current modern research shows through fields of positive psychology and others. For example, Bain and Company, which is one of the top management consulting companies in the world, did a study with like 2,000 companies and employees to look at what makes for inspiring leaders. And what they found is that employees that are inspired are twice as productive as people that are just coming to do their jobs. And when they looked at what are the qualities that leaders exhibit to get employees inspired, what they found is that these were people that were selfless or not selfish. They were servant leaders. They were centered. They were good listeners. They had good presence, and so on. And if you look at the list, they had identified 33 qualities. Most of them overlap with the qualities of spiritual intelligence that I'm talking about: egolessness and humility and integrity. I mean, there's so much research in leadership theory that integrity is crucial. For example, nobody's going to want to follow someone that doesn't walk the talk or live in integrity with what they're valuing or express gratitude or what have you. Also, when you think about what is business exists for, okay? I mean, we kind of get lost in the thing. We want to make money, etc. But businesses exist to serve their customers' needs. Now, you know, so service is really built into what a business is about. And we just have to enlarge and look at businesses with multiple stakeholders. So business needs to serve its customers. It also needs to serve its shareholders that are giving it money. It needs to serve its employees that are giving them time and so on. And the fact is that businesses that look at all their stakeholders and try and meet all their needs actually produce better financial returns for their shareholders than businesses that just say, oh, we're all about maximizing profits, because that's not very inspiring to your employees, and it doesn't result in the best products and brand loyalty with your customers. So service is integral to what we are doing in business. And we just have to connect with that and get out of the mechanics of doing our jobs, right? There's a classic folk tale, you know, with someone walking down the road and they come across three people, you know, laying bricks, and you ask one of them, what are you doing? It says, oh, I take a brick from here and I move it here and I put some thing to put it together. Okay, and you ask the second person, what do you do? And he says, oh, I'm a builder and this is my job, and I build, and this is how I support my company and my family. And then you ask the third person, what are you doing? He says, oh, we're building a hospital for our community here in town. So when people need medical care, urgent medical care, they don't have to travel for over an hour. So, you know, what's the difference between these three people? They're doing the same mechanical things, but I would want an employee that is coming at it like the third one, where they're connecting with the underlying purpose of why they're there and what's the value behind it. So it's kind of uncovering the purpose, the service, and that inspires people. They're more motivated. They bring more of themselves into what they're doing. They form a community around it. And today, you know, people are so isolated. They announced in the US that we have an epidemic of loneliness, and the bulk of people's waking hours are at work, and work is people's primary community. So it's so crucial that people align behind the purpose of the organization, the mission, the vision, the values of how you work together. And then there's a web of mutuality of care among people, so you're not feeling so isolated. And then you bring your whole self to work, and it's so much more meaningful and rewarding, and people are more productive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that it's so interesting that as we move into this era of stepping into kind of like being not only leading with our heads, but being in alignment with our hearts. And it's a belief of mine that when your head and your heart are in alignment, you're being led by your soul. And I grew up in South Africa where it was kind of like quite a harsh thing. Jon and I used to work together many, many years ago at another tech company. But when I first got into working in corporate, it was very much, you know, the heart, you know, the business doesn't have a heart. You just got to show up. You've got to do the work. You know, it's whatever it is at all costs. There's no line, you know, and it was just like, it was this cool thing. You just get up, you show up. You don't need to like who you work with. You've just got to do the best that you can. And we were working like crazy hours at that time. And I started to realize that later on when I moved to the UK and started working. And then I've always been fortunate to have a spiritual foundation in the sense that my family were 5 generations of spiritualists, but it never was a thing that was spoken about 20, 30 years ago. So I always had like, I know when I had my reawakening, I had 2 Facebook profiles, one for my spirituality and one for my corporate everyday people, because it was just like, oh my goodness, what are people going to think that I'm into this whole woo-woo and all of that, and still had these mix of concepts of the business doesn't have a heart, but yet we call it a baby and we need to nurture it. But it's like, it's so confusing. And later on, I started to discover that we are our businesses, and that these masks that we wear in different places, it's important to completely live authentically who we are, and in life and in business, and it's that authenticity, and that's something that I'm starting to uncover and making sure that always in that integrity. And sometimes we fall into those habits, we fall into those patterns of what we know in that conditioning. And the hardest part, especially as a woman, is tapping into that nurturing, that caring, that feminine side with all the, I don't know, the concepts of the judgment that goes behind that, and all the rest of that. How would you talk to bringing in the balance between that masculine and feminine energy to lead a business, to lead a team, to, you know, to really get nurture the people around you?
Yeah, well, you're raising a number of important points. So I think masculine and feminine are part of our wholeness. And I think those energies exist in all of us, whether I'm a man or a woman. I identify as a man, but I have a lot of feminine sides and qualities, and I've worked on cultivating it, and I don't feel ashamed about it. I think it makes me more effective and more powerful as a human being. But just I'll elaborate on that, but I want to rewind for 1 second on what you said earlier about the 2 sides. You had your spiritual side and your heart and your linear, this like it just the way your body was, you just feel, I could feel the rigidity of it, you know. And when we're in that place, we're not whole, we're divided. We have our mind, we have our heart, we have our spirit, and each of them is pulling us in different direction. So when we're like that, we're not aligned, we're not whole. That divides us and weakens us. I mean, it's when all of us are behind our purpose, our vision, our mission, our what we're doing, then the fullness of us is expressed, and we have the most power that we can bring in. So I think it's just, you know, otherwise it's like you're rowing in different directions and you're pulling in different directions and you're divided and you're unstable. So I just want to say that bringing our whole selves makes us more empowered and more powerful. Now, masculine, feminine, I think of both of them. There are two types of leadership. There's kind of what I think of as the yang leadership, which is leading from the front, is normally what we think about of leadership. Is like the leader is, I have a vision, and this is where we're going, and follow me. And I think that's important and necessary sometimes. There are great leaders that have a vision. It could be in business, whether it's Steve Jobs, he has a vision for handheld, you know, smartphones, etc. Or it could be Martin Luther King, who has a vision of a world of equality among human beings, regardless of their race. But he had a dream. He had a big, I have a dream speech, you know, it's very famous. So he had this vision, and that inspires people. And that's what I call leading from the front. And that's powerful and important for leaders. But then there's another thing, which is the yin side of leadership, which is the leading from behind and the facilitating thing and supporting people to discover their own way. So instead of running ahead and saying, follow me, it's like, okay, let me help facilitate you to discover your way, and kind of, and you can call that feminine, you can call that yin. And I think the best leaders can alternate between. Sometimes they run ahead and say, this is where we're going, follow me. And then they drop back and like a shepherd who you know, brings together their flock. I think that the concept of leading from behind was developed by Nelson Mandela, and it's inspired actually by the Bible. I hate to say it, but and some of the greatest leaders, whether it's Moses or whatever, King David, were shepherds, that they would take care of their flock, and I think a good leader shows that care for their employees, and people feel their care, and that creates the trust and the attachment, and then they feel like they're growing and they're being facilitated and coached. So I think both styles of leadership, leading from the front, the yang, and leading from behind, the facilitative, nurturing, is super important and effective. And I think the best leaders can alternate between them.
That's fantastic. I was going to ask a couple of questions that I feel are quite close together. One is for people that want to find their vision, they want to find their purpose, and this can be individual, and it can be, you know, and it can be bringing every aspect of themselves together, but also in servitude of their teams, their companies, their shareholders, and their customers. And I think somewhere in that, this was from my experience, was also this ability to bring the whole of you into the workplace. One of the first things I did was as I settled on my vision, which was to help raise the vibrations of billions of hearts across the planet, I started in music. And so on the company directory of what is now over 1.8 million people, I posted, like, if you just visited my page, it said, senior software manager, my mission to raise the vibrations of billions of hearts. I write a song every day. Please click here on my YouTube channel. And people would do it before they often met me, especially if they didn't know me. And I would, at every occasion, including to some of the directors of the company, the S team, I would go and bring my guitar along and I'd improvise a song in the moment. And it was like, I wanted to show there's the kind of delivery guy and the product visionary, but also this person that wants to have fun in the workplace and wants to bring, you know, I always like channel my songs, and it's always very intuitive. And I wanted to bring that aspect to me. And I always did it, even when it felt, I wasn't sure if I was entirely safe. I was like, I'm going to make it safe. I'm going to make it safe for me and for everyone else. I'm going to lead by example. So yeah, I think that's two big questions, but yeah, some about the purpose, and then also about bringing the whole of you to the workplace.
Yeah, well, I think they're related, and it was delightful to just hear you describe your process, and I was just feeling your smile, like you were radiating this joy, and as you were talking about it, bringing all yourself. But you know, I just want to highlight a couple of things. One is that when people have fun and joy, they're that much more creative. And there's all this research that in problem solving, bringing joy, bringing humor, bringing fun. And that's why a lot of design companies and that are trying to create a lot of creativity, create these fun environments, and they have games and so on. So I think it's beautiful, and what you were doing, and by having, you know, setting a role model that you could be creative and do this and bring your whole self, you probably inspired other people and gave them permission to do the same. So in that way, your authentic expression inspired other people to be in their fullness and their authentic expression. But this relates to the question of purpose. So how do we discover our purpose? So think about it this way. First of all, you know, each of us human beings, we have 8 billion of us now on this planet, roughly, and we're each unique. Never in the history of the universe, 14 billion years, has there been another Jon or Natasha or Yosi. And never will there be another one like us. And each of us are endowed with some unique talents, gifts, and superpowers. So life has endowed each of us with unique gifts. Now, when you give a friend a gift or you receive a gift, do you want them to open it? Do you want them to use it? I mean, if you give someone a gift and they never open it, they never use it, you're kind of disappointed, right? So we were given a gift, the gift of life and the gift of our talent. So your talent is a musician. I don't have great musical talent. I have other talents. So, you know, hopefully at least one or two of them. So, so for you to use and actualize your talent in music and express it and use it to help other, bring a smile, inspire, give them a certain sense of feeling or mood, etc. So when we apply our gifts in contribution and service of others, we feel most fulfilled. We're actualizing ourselves, and our life has meaning and purpose. And so that's at the individual level. It's the same thing you could think of at the organizational, the corporate level, right? Companies talk about their competitive differentiation. It's like, what is our unique gifts in the marketplace? And some companies are like, oh, we have beautiful design. Other companies are, we know how to do things at really low cost and high volume or whatever. So, you know, each company, each individual have our unique differentiated talent capacity, and we want to use it and apply it in service. And that's the most fulfilling. The research shows that, you know, if there are these experiments, people go in and go to a lottery. Some people win $20 or whatever, and others don't. And then they, of course, the people who won $20 are happier than the people who didn't, right? Then they take the people who won the money and they divide them in two randomly. Some people are told, okay, go take that $20, spend it on yourself, do whatever you want, enjoy it. And the other half are told, go take that $20 and spend it on someone else, you know, that you can. And then they look at the end of the day, how do those people's mood is? And the people who spend the money on themselves had a momentary increase in their happiness when they won the money. But at night, by the time they went to bed, there was no lasting effect on them. The people who took that $20 and spent it on someone else had a increased well-being that lasted, that there was greater meaning. So the moral of this story, of this experiment, is that when we share our gifts and what we receive to help contribute to others, we create a connection, there's greater meaning, and we have deeper fulfillment. So, you know, we have to identify our gifts, what our talents, gifts, superpowers, and then ask ourselves, how can we use that to contribute to others, to what needs to be done in the world? And when we bring those two in alignment, our life has greater fulfillment, greater meaning, and we're actualizing ourselves. And that's our purpose, that's our meaning, and that's our joy.
Oh, I love that. And I wanted to add a little story, which was I took along my guitar. I've had bought a tiny little travel guitar, and I took it out to Seattle, and I was there doing presentations on our to many senior leaders who came and visited our stand. And so we were presenting how our AI is responsible in these different recruitment use cases, which, you know, in itself, like I did resonate with. I felt really passionate about doing the right thing, you know, fairness, regardless of gender or race or background, and being able to be, you know, accountable and measure what you're doing and see the real life impact you have on real people. And I didn't totally understand, but it felt compelled to bring my guitar. And my plan wasn't ask anyone. I just said, I'm just going to turn up. When people come to my stand, I'll chat with them. I'll do a little presentation. And then at the end, I'll just create a song. I'll just improvise the song for them. And I remember after doing about 25 of these, so someone said to me, oh, what's the guitar for? And I said, I'm gonna sing you a song now. And they said, but that's impossible. And I said, oh, there's no point in trying to explain it. I said, I'll just sing. So I just sang them a song. And at the end, they said, how did you know all these things about me? And I said, you just told me. You just told me all these things, like where you're from, what you like, your questions that you asked. And I'm just reflecting them back to you. And they really loved it. And in fact, that person a year later came on to be one of my bosses, which is really funny. And I didn't even though, and I totally resonate with everyone's unique, and everyone has these unique gifts and abilities, these superpowers. I didn't quite understand what mine was. And that's one of my kind of growth areas, is always like not fully understanding the impact of what the gift I've been given. But what I started to realize was that my ability as a leader is to help people connect with the human, the people side of the customer, and to deliver to that, to be really clear about how that feels from both the servitude and the recipient of the service. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense and flow very easily when I brought these two very unlikely gifts of software delivery and at the time music together. I went on to, my question I'm going to ask is, I went on to after that bringing some things like mindfulness, meditation into the workplace. And I found that really interesting because as I started to do it with people in the UK and around Europe, and I was running started with weekly sessions, some people just found it really hard to make time to kind of, in quotes, like make time for meditation. And yet when they did it, those that did step forwards would say, well, we only did it for 10 minutes, but it just seemed to create this like oasis of calm. Like I feel connected with my body. I feel clear. I feel like I can, all those things that I was worrying about, the noise is settled. And now I feel much clearer about what it is I want to do this afternoon. And I was interested in, you'd raise a number of different practices to help people, move towards spiritual intelligence. How can you describe that change process that you take people through?
Wow, it's a long process. It's a journey. First of all, but before I go there, I would say your story with the music and this person is so beautiful, so touching. I mean, you gave this person such a gift, and it's just very touching and very amazing. So yeah. So with the mindfulness and people being busy, let me just comment about that, and then I'll try and step back and talk bigger picture. I mean, first of all, all the research shows that even people on a production line that are doing very mechanical assembly line tasks, if they take 10-minute breaks, they produce more at the end of the day, and their output is higher quality. So, you know, if that's true for people doing mechanical repetitive tasks, how much more true is it for people that are doing what I would call, or you might call, knowledge worker tasks, where it's their creativity and knowledge and synthesis and judgment and having clarity of mind and being centered and so on is gonna. And if you're a leader, I mean, as your leader, it's not about the number of hours you're working or whatever. It's about the vibration, the energy, the inspiration you provide. So caring for ourselves to clear our mind and do these kinds of practices, you know, pays off tremendously. In our productivity, in our effectiveness as knowledge workers, as software engineers, as creative people, as whatever it is, as salespeople. I mean, if you're in sales and you're talking to customers, you got to be present. You have to be reading the cues that are coming from them. Otherwise, you're misattuned, and you're not going to be effective in building rapport and selling them. So you could think down any real professional job, and our ability to be centered and clear-headed and grounded is going to make us so much more productive. So, okay, just on that. And how do you get people? I mean, you know, all of us are just programmed from when we're babies, right? You come into this world and you can't survive on your own, right? You need mom's breast and milk. You need other people to care for you, change your diaper, whatever. So we're kind of preconditioned to look for all the goodies outside. That's kind of our orientation. So we grow up, we think that our happiness, our well-being depends on, like you said, making more money, having a nicer car, a bigger house, and so on. And some of that is okay, natural. But the real treasures of our well-being is within us. And otherwise, if we're always dependent on these external things, we're disempowering ourselves. It's not in our control, you know, how much money we make, or the company has a bad quarter and they do a layoff, and you know what, there's so much that can happen that's outside our control as leaders, even with my clients, CEOs, etc. What's happening in the funding environment, the venture capital environment, the stock market, wars in the world, you know, political turmoil. So if we condition our well-being on things outside, we're disempowered and we're victims of that, and we're out of our control. So the first thing is to start to guide people inward. And as they face problems and challenges, and then I outline this in my book, case by case for each quality, how they come in with what seemingly a mundane human problem, like, you know, their company's running out of cash, they're doing layoff, or, you know, they're having performance problems with this employee and they don't know what to do. And, you know, my method, and time again, is to turn them back inward, to help them connect with their wisdom, their intuition, their higher self. And then from there, the answers start to come, and they find their inner guidance. They find their inspiration. And so, but this is a journey. I mean, spiritual intelligence is not something you read my book and you're, oh, I'm done. You know, it's a lifelong journey of practice and setting new neural pathways and developing the muscles for mindfulness, for gratitude, for joy, for beauty, and so on. I mean, you don't expect to go to the gym once and then you're in good shape. No, you go to the gym, or you go jogging, or you do whatever your exercises are several times a week to keep in shape and to keep developing and staying healthy. So there's no reason to believe we need to do that for our body, but not for our hearts, not for our consciousness, not for our soul. So it's an ongoing journey, but people have to feel that as they going down the path, they are indeed happier, they are indeed more fulfilled, they are more effective. And you know, so But what I've seen working with my clients, a number of them over 8, 10 years, is just that their life is transformed, not just in terms of business, but they're more present at home with their children, at the family dinner. Their relationships are improved, and people in their lives are telling, hey, you seem to be very different. But I'm talking about a process that takes months and years and is an ongoing. But that's the joy, the adventure. I mean, where are we rushing to? I mean, it's like we're growing, we're evolving, we're actualizing more of ourselves, and the journey is the reward, as they say. It's a cliche, but it's true.
And just, I totally agree. Well, just going back to what Natasha was saying about like the balance of feminine, masculine. A funny segue to that was my son said to me, this is about 5 years ago. He said, "Dad, I think you're that guy. You know that guy in the Terminator movie who develops, he finds the chip, with the AI chip for the Terminator in the hand, and develops the new supercomputers." And he's like, "That's you." And I'm like, "No, it's not." I said, "That's not my vision." He said, "I know it's not your vision, but I bet that's what happens to you." I was like, "No, that's not what I want." And it was funny, and I'm a big fan of those movies, but it was really interesting because it gave me like reference for what I didn't want. And then for what I did want, at the time, my company was like, "Hey, there's this thing you can write, and it's like a vision, right? So it's a press release in the next like 4 years or so, looking back to all the way back to now, but it's describing in the future like what it is that your customers get, and think about it from your customer perspective." And the approach to creating that was very much often encouraged to just write a lot and share it with people and speak to your customers. And a lot of it was like a lot of doing and a lot of very kind of masculine behaviors, which I totally get. And then I had the challenge when I started my own business as like, I think I love the idea of a vision because I don't want to go to that other place where I don't want to be that other Jon. But for the vision this time, I want to create it differently. And so I one of the techniques I use is I just kind of staggered it. So I just said, I'm going to start the universe perspective and like helping balance darkness and light and harmony and unity in the universe. And then all the way back to like, what am I going to do to contribute to it? But instead of like, and it was so tempting to just sit for hours on end typing away. Instead, I would go into meditation. I'd maybe write for an hour and then go into meditation, or maybe take the rest of the day off. And then I'd go for a walk in nature. And I wouldn't go back to writing again until I'd received more inspiration. And often, and I remember, because I was writing at the time, I remember when Natasha and I connected again after almost 20 years. And I remember I was like, yeah, there's this thing I need to do where I just need to talk to my customers. And to be honest, that's also one of our drivers for this podcast, which is to meet lots of people and find more about the problems that the world faces. And I felt that as a receiving mechanism, like really resonates with me. And now, in fact, it's just up on my laptop still from this morning. Is like every morning I look at that vision and I just kind of look at it and I'm like, is that me? Is that my purpose? Is that what I really want to do? How does it feel today? And who, and because I've always got some customer emails, like, are they the customers? And how do they feel about it? And I have it on my website. That was a big thing. I wanted to be really transparent, like ultra transparency. So that anyone could just read it and go, yeah, that's me or not me, or, Jon's crazy or not. And they can choose themselves. But yeah, I was really interested in the vision creation process, whether it's you as an individual or, shepherding teams to be able to do it.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful story. An inspiring one as you talk about it. I think just to highlight a few of the things you're saying, coming up with a vision is not a linear logical process, right? I mean, you basically open up the invitation and you go into meditation, or we walk in the forest, we quiet our mind, and we get downloads, we get ideas. I mean, my best ideas come when in the morning I walk down the beach. I live close to the ocean by the beach, and I walk down at dawn before sunrise, and the birds are there, and it's just so beautiful, and the depth and the vastness of the ocean. And then all of a sudden ideas come to me. And where do they come from? I don't know. But if you look at all the great inventors, that's what they say, whether it's Einstein in science or Thomas Edison, he would run into a problem and he wouldn't know what to do with it. And he would take naps. And he would take naps and he would just present himself the problem. And then he'd wake up and, he would set a thing that he would wake up suddenly after 10 minutes. And that's when he got his ideas, or the guy who developed the benzene thing. And or Mozart is actually says, he has a beautiful quote, is like, when I'm relaxed and in good cheer, and this music comes to me. Where it comes from, I don't know. So I think the most creative people just kind of quiet the efforting, logical mind, and then we can receive these inspirations. Where do they come from? We can't really say, but we're a channel. And when we're, people now talk about flow states, right? In flow states, you're kind of merged with the thing. There's no you, there's no effort, but you're most effective and you're most fulfilled. So, to use spiritual jargon, you become egoless around it. And that's your greatest creativity, and you become a channel. And it's not, I did it, it's coming through me. And it's a very different experience, but somehow magically we're most effective and most creative in that. So I may have lost your question.
No, it's fantastic. I love those references as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah, but so yeah, it relates to the masculine and feminine. Okay, sorry. So the masculine is like, more linear, and it's like logical, and that's great. We need that quality in our life and in solving problems. The feminine is more receptive and open. And so, to come up with the best solutions, we have to do the analysis, or you can call it the logical, etc. And then we need to let go and open and be receptive. And then our subconscious, or I don't know what, our spirit somehow comes to us, and then we get the solution. So it is, even in that way, it's the balance of the masculine and feminine. I mean, your masculine side perhaps started by saying, hey, I want to contribute to raising the vibration of the whole. I don't know how to do it, whatever, but that's kind of an intention, a North Star. And then you opened up and you said, I don't know. And then you got more details. And that's kind of the feminine side. So again, it is the goal-directed, what you might say masculine, and then the open circular. So it's lines and circles, the line quality is very directed, pointed, and then the circle quality, which is open and receptive. And then, that's how I see it.
Absolutely. I found it quite, when I moved very much from very, very corporate, very much linear thinking and making things happen, having to force it in a way to, I find myself very much in a burnout state, and ended up really tapping back into spirituality and going within. As you said, the answers started to get them within. I knew that there were blocks, and started working on my health physically, mentally, and emotionally. And that helped me to really start moving into another area of that collaboration and going into the flow, where we're actually quite agile in connecting in and responding to the opportunities that show forward to us, which is quite interesting, in the sense of moving very much from if I want it, I have to make it happen, to pointing that arrow and then going, okay, what are the opportunities that show up to get into that flow of having that or something better? And what are your recommendations to allow that little bit of flow, to release that control, to release and sometimes even surrender into the flow of what is coming towards us in order to achieve that goal or something better?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great question, and I wish I had a simple answer. But I think, you know, what we're talking about, and I deal with this with my clients all the time, which is how to be passionately engaged, working towards a particular vision or purpose, and at the same time be unattached to outcome.
Yeah.
If you're all unattached to outcome, you don't care, and like, oh, okay, it may not, then you're passive. But that's not what we want to do. We want to be with passionate engagement towards a cause or a goal or something, but also be surrendered to the outcome and unattached to the outcome, and ask ourselves kind of what wants to happen through me in this way, and trusting that, I mean, a key piece of it is the trust that even if it doesn't come out exactly as I envisioned it or wanted it, something good's going to come out, maybe something better. And we get to that by looking back. I mean, if you look back at a lot of, at least my life, I had this great trauma of, as I mentioned, I had this awakening and was pushed out, and it threw me into a manic episode. And as a result, I got pushed out of the company. It was my baby. My stock price collapsed in half. I was shamed and so on. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. But in hindsight, it's one of the greatest blessings because it changed the direction of my life. So, you know, oftentimes if we reflect back on our lives, we're laid off from a job, we end a relationship, we receive some kind of medical diagnosis. I mean, we've all had these really terrible things that quote unquote happened to us. And then when we look back, we see that that was the beginning of a blessing. The job we were fired from got us to change our career and find something more fulfilling. The relationship that didn't work out, we find ourselves in a much better, healthier relationship. So we have to develop trust that we're going to be okay, that somehow life is going to work through us, and we'll be okay. So we go wholeheartedly passionate towards it, but we're surrendering the outcome, trusting that if that doesn't go that way, something good can happen. And then how to balance those two energies. You know, I work with my clients through different exercises. One is feeling the passion and seeing what that's like in the body, and the passionate aliveness and the force and the power of that, putting that in one hand, and then this surrender to outcome and being the receptive, and what that energy is like in the body, and it's softened, and I feel like I'm showered by this warm light, etc. It's a very, and then somehow stepping back and including both and integrating. I'm working with one of my clients right now exactly on this very issue, where the company's in a critical juncture point, they need to sell it, etc. And you know, they're very fired up that this may go this way, but it may not. And so how does he bring his full passionate to do all he can to do it, but also have the trust that even if it doesn't exactly work out this way, something, okay, he and his team will be okay. And so it goes back to, can he enjoy the game? Can he enjoy the process and the joy in practicing and doing and developing and growing through it all? And so that's part of the non-attachment to outcome. But you know, we play tennis or golf or whatever. I mean, you play to win, but you enjoy the game whether or not you win or not. I don't know, whatever your favorite sport is, and someone who's listening. So, you know, we do the best we can when we take that shot, and we try and aim it and so on. But even if it doesn't go exactly and we lose the game, it's like, oh, that was a good game. I had fun. So, so if you focus on the game and enjoying the game, bringing the best you can into the game, but still view it as a game and an opportunity to enjoy yourself, actualize your talents and skills, and so I hope I'm giving you a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. No, that really resonates, and I love the analogy. For sure, it helps us to enjoy, and it's something is following our joy. I think a lot of the times we don't follow our joy and our excitement because it's whatever we make it mean. And I love that, following your joy and your excitement, because we don't know where it's going to lead, and enjoying the process, which I think brings us to being completely present.
Just on that point quickly, is that we don't want to make our joy and happiness dependent on a particular outcome, because
No,
then we're again disempowered.
but it's about enjoying the process.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I tend to tell myself when things perceivably go awry is, how is this working for me? What are the opportunities that are showing up from this hiccup? Or this, what is perceived as a block. And a lot of the times we start to see the beautiful things that arise from that opportunity that had presented itself. So I tend to see things in that way, as in, I had just recently had a trip booked to Canada that I didn't go to, but found myself in the Highlands of Scotland, connected to nature and going within. And what a wonderful opportunity that presented to itself, which absolutely helped me to have a look at how I'm being of service now in a way that really excites me, because perhaps that vision that I had before is a little bit outdated, or is not me anymore, and it was an opportunity to pivot on that. So absolutely, in looking at, this is where I want to go, but if something happens in the meanwhile, it's how is this working for me?
Yeah.
Which is a great mindset. Well, I find for myself.
Yeah, totally. It relates to what I said, is the notion of trust, and looking at these quote unquote mishaps as invitations, as opportunities. And looking that in the past, these things happen and better things happen. The other thing that I find really helpful is to ask ourselves, what is the situation inviting in me? What qualities is it calling forth? And that, like, oh, I'm disappointed. What is it inviting me? It's inviting non-attachment, inviting agility. It's inviting thing. And so it is an opportunity to practice these qualities, and then it's inviting resilience, it's inviting persistence. And then, so, each one of those things are calling forth certain qualities that the situation requires of us. And then, as you said, it's an opportunity for our development. And we get to cultivate these qualities, which at the end of the day are that much more important, because it's who we are that's more important than any specific outcome.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And I would like to take us into our mindful meditation shortly. And before I do, because I know what happens after I do it, like we all feel very relaxed and don't really want to talk much. But what I'd love to do is just ask Yosi, how do people connect with your work, with you in the future, if they resonate with your vision and your journey?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I have a website. It's yosiamram.net, just as my name is spelled, YOSIAMRAM.net. And from there, it can take people to my spiritual assessment site. And there's a free assessment of spiritual intelligence and these 22 qualities. People can get a profile, not to compare yourself to others, but to see mindfulness maybe is a strong quality. Compassion is an opportunity, or joy or beauty or whatever. So that's one thing. I also host monthly free events for awakening a particular quality. This week, on Friday, there's a free event for the Awakening SI. It'll be about compassion. And compassion is so crucial, important, our own suffering and the suffering that's happening in the world and the turmoil. So each month, previous month was on higher self, previous month was on egolessness, before that it was on beauty and love and so on. So each month we work on one quality. These are free events. And I also have my book that you mentioned that's available online anywhere. Spiritually Intelligent Leadership, How to Inspire by Being Inspired. And I have a YouTube channel, which is at Awakening Spiritual Intelligence, one word. And so these are just some of the ways. And Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank
Beautiful.
you so much.
Thank you.
Well, you've given me a hard job to come up with a great meditation based on our chat today. So thank you for all of this, and I hope that some of it reflects through.
Yeah, it's
we
your
shall...
piece of music. I can't wait.
That's right. Yeah, I've always got a guitar right next to me.
Uh,
Okay, so if you'd like to join me now, and we'll start by taking 3 deep breaths into the nose, nice and deep. And breathe out what doesn't serve our highest good any longer. And breathe in through our nose, nice and deep. And release any stress, anxiety, fear, or shame, nice and loud. And breathe in through the nose, nice and deep. And release any low vibration energy or emotion, nice and loud. And continue to breathe as deeply and as calmly as feels right for you. And I'd like you to bring your attention to your body, to your heart, and how you're feeling in this moment. Bring your attention to where you're sat or laying down or standing or walking. And I'd like you to join me on a journey as we set the intention in this meditation to connect closer with our vision, both within us and outside of us. And on this journey, I'd like you to imagine your next working day. And it's going to be a very special working day because after you've woken up in the morning and you feel excited for the day ahead, perhaps you've had your morning coffee, or you've been for a run or yoga or a walk, or you've simply taken a moment for yourself. Just before you're about to start your regular daily routine, your working day, I'd like you to join me. And we're going to take a short journey for a few minutes up to a mountaintop. It's a mountain that feels familiar and safe. It's a mountain that is close by to where you live, to where you work. And as you join me and we climb gently up the slopes, as we walk up to the top of this mountain, I'd like you to look down at the beautiful view ahead of you. This mountain's very high, and yet it's very calm, and it's a warm day, and there's just a gentle breeze. You feel connected with the ground and the nature around you. And down below, down on the ground, you see a town, a city, a landscape ahead of you. And these are the people, they're your customers going about their daily lives. And the town and city in front of you is a mix of buildings, factories. It's also beautiful parks and places for people to relax and do sports. And I'd like you to go back to your heart for a moment and feel into that superpower that you were given in this lifetime. The thing, very thing that you've loved often since you were a child, and whether you've continued it since your childhood or whether you paused it and you're not sure how to use this superpower now, I'd like you to bring forward that feeling of limitless abundance and excitement that you feel at the very center of your heart. And I'd like you to receive for a moment from the mountain and the landscape around you this message of how you will use your superpower to assist and help serve all of these people, all of your customers. Just allow this to be received into your heart for a moment. And as you allow and receive, know that this is a practice and it can take many times, in fact, sometimes many days to practice this over and over to continually gain clarity on how you will use your superpowers to serve your customers. And to help you on your journey, look ahead for just before the horizon ahead of you. There's another mountain, and this mountain is a reflection of the one that you're standing on. And on that mountain is the future version of you. And what's exciting is that this feeling that you feel now, in this now moment of excitement about being able to do all the things you love that fuel your fire, that drive you and give you purpose and meaning each day, that exists not only now, it also exists in this future version of you in several years' time. And when you look down at the ground, look down at the mountain, down at the ground where all your customers are, and the path that leads you all the way to your future, there's an inner knowing building within you that every step you're about to take is going to continue to make this journey feel fabulous, fun, and flow. You're going to feel free in every moment. Now, each day, as you join me and we walk together down this path, back down the mountain, this time on the other side, heading into the town and the city and all the places of leisure and nature. As we follow this path, we realize that it's not straight, that every day we're learning and reflecting on our purpose, looking ahead to our future and feeling into, does this feel fabulous, fun, flow, and freedom to me? How is it making my customers feel? And all those times on that journey, sometimes we're looking left and seeing dead ends. Sometimes we're looking right and we're seeing a beautiful opportunity to reconnect with nature, to go into deep inner work and reflect on our ability and our lessons to learn and to receive. And every time we feel frustrated and every time we feel all those human emotions, we know that on our journey, this journey is happening for us, not against us. And this universe is conspiring to assist us to continually, every single day, allow us to achieve our vision. For that future vision, the one ahead of us in that mountain just before the edge of the horizon, it's already happening and it's already in your heart right now. If you just take this time each day before you start your working day to receive and reflect and hone in on your purpose today. And when you're ready, I'd like you to continue on with your day. And for this meditation, I'd like you to come back to your body, back to this moment, and hold within your heart that key, that definition, that purpose, and that feeling that you sought before you entered this space to bring whatever serves your highest good back to this moment, back to your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and move again.
Thank you, Jon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yosi.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
feel
didn't want to
calm
leave.
and
I didn't want to leave the journey. I was like, this is great. I'm going to do this every day.
yeah, yeah. Well, I feel calm and nourished, like a soft shower of light coming in and radiating through my heart, coming through the head and out. And there's a subtle bliss feeling.
Oh, fabulous. Thank you for sharing your experience. And thank you for joining us on this podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you. And yeah, looking forward to following your journey and perhaps some of those workshops you mentioned as well. It's been a real pleasure, Yosi, and thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thank you for
Likewise.
sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us and all the viewers. We really appreciate that, and appreciate you for doing what you do and for trailblazing this for all of us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure, my honor.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much, everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in the next podcast. We'll end our recording here. Thank you.
Thank you.